computer. Yeah. So yeah, you know, A, what's consciousness, and B, what is the mind and where is the mind? But obviously in the kind of orthodox materialist world, then mind is brain, it's an outcome of brain, and consciousness emerges from the brain. So it's all about the brain. What it says here is some university, Garfinkel at the University of Sussex, has discovered, apparently, that our bodies have more influence over our minds than you might imagine. Our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are shaped in part by the internal signals that arise from our body, she says. But it goes beyond that. It is leading her and others to a surprising conclusion that the body helps to generate our sense of self and is a key part of consciousness. It has long been known that our internal organs have lives of their own. They generate electrical activity, which is conveyed by neurons to the brain. As a result, signals from your heartbeat, your breathing, the slow regular pulses of your stomach, and the state of your muscles are all represented in the brain's electrical activity. The brain in turn regulates these functions. In other words, there's a neuronal loop in which nerve cells carry information from the organs up to the brain and commands down to the organs. So what they're talking about is whether you can sense that. So that's called interoception, awareness of bodily kind of signals. So interoception is a sort of sixth sense that we have about what is going on in our body. Those who can sense their heartbeats most accurately tend to make better intuitive decisions and are better at perceiving the emotions of others. The cyclic patterns of the heartbeat is predictable. When people made choices which were truest to themselves was when their brains were listening most closely to their hearts. This is new scientists saying this. This is like the materialist reductionist Bible. Body signals influence emotions, and emotions shape our sense of self through memory and learning. Signals from the heart can really drive and override conditioned fear responses. This is where it gets a bit depressing. So given all this research, you know, which I've been talking about for 27 years, the results lend support to the rationale that drugs designed to act on the cardiovascular system might help to treat post-traumatic stress disorder. Yeah, they might. They will, but so will breathing and self-regulating. A couple of characters have filed a patent related to the use of breathing patterns to predict behaviors. Okay, interesting, patenting breathing. I thought we were all allowed to do that. There's also philosophical implications to these discoveries. If consciousness is embodied, that could affect how we think about death, which is currently defined by the World Health Organization as the irreversible loss of brain, but not body function. And there's some interesting research using HRV as a maybe more accurate measure for whether someone is actually dead or not, brain dead or not. So look, you know, this stuff's breaking through. There it is, New Scientist.
Can you just hold that back up again so I can get the screen grabber?
Well, I've actually got the article. I'll send to you all. I sent it to our community. It's a PDF. I can send it. It's a great article.
Yeah, please send a PDF. I'd really like to.
It's wonderful. And then a couple of other ones that have popped up recently that you just wouldn't expect to see in New Scientist. I mean, this one caused a lot of letters where people were, how can you say this, New Scientist? Is the universe conscious? What? So this whole field of what's called panpsychism is really popping up. Now, most panpsychists are still materialist, but you know, it's a big step to say that consciousness might be kind of everywhere to varying degrees. And then even, you know, they're prepared to admit that we might not know it all, and there might even be different forces of nature that we hadn't quite discovered yet and that might be important, fifth forces of nature. So we're not far off of people perhaps beginning to even talk seriously about consciousness being a force of nature, one that can't be reduced. You It's exciting times. Things are moving really, really fast, really fast.
Kevin, while you're at it, I just wanted to add, since you have been showing the work of new scientists, they are going on about it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I keep meaning to order that one. Yeah, the nature of reality. I mean, also 95% of that is basically materialist still, but yeah, there's more and more people who are saying, hang on a minute, there's some really weird stuff that seems to be happening that would indicate perhaps the existing paradigms aren't quite right.
This is with this way that we can find really the relation with everything, you know, because all these chaotic things in the world, it is because they think each country is separated, they want their interests, and by all these scientific things, because we need it now because of our education, we need to measure everything and stuff like that. And perhaps this brings this knowledge, which we had it. I mean, our grandparents, they had it, they bring it back. And I think this would be a possibility to have peace.
Yeah, well, certainly, you know, there needs to be a combination of the two.
Yeah.
Can I just ask a quick question, and I can share this with you. Have you come across the work of John Travis and the Wellness Index? It kind of really fits. He's a doctor. It's been this kind of really fits with everything, with this kind of what you're doing in the domains, etc. And it really talks about the energy system. But I'll put you a link later. But I've been using it for a long time. That might be quite helpful as well, because it brings a medical approach into it.
Super. We'll have pop all the links in. I'll collect all of those. You guys are going to be reading stuff for the next 3 years. Okay, let's go back into screen share. So, that one. Share. Okay, so right, for the rest of the time together, we're going to be engaging in the process. Okay, so the process that we'll follow is the one that's laid out in this guidebook. So you'll be using this with Alan, and this provides a useful structure for you to take someone on a journey through the HeartMath system and the different exercises, models, tools, and techniques. This is not the only way to do it. I don't actually even personally think it's the best way to do it. It's the way that this certification program is structured. But I do things differently and provide you with different methods of delivery in terms of how you might organize things. But it certainly provides a really useful process for you to practice a couple of times before you make this material your own. And so the outcomes of this process, as laid out in the guidebook, are to help your client, your coachee, identify the stuff in their life that's depleting them, so the stressy stuff. Help them to understand how to be more intelligent about how they regulate their energy, so how they reduce depletion and increase renewal, how they build resilience. Help them use coherence to think more clearly and make better decisions. Help them understand how to use coherence to communicate more effectively and improve their relationships. How to use coherence to access intuition, make better decisions, be more creative, solve problems. And then at the end of all this process, to reflect on all of that and recognize, hey, making this coherence thing a part of my life has been worthwhile, and I'm going to continue to do it, hopefully for the rest of their lives. So in terms of the toolbox, within that guidebook, there's 6 different techniques, but I'll be sharing 8 techniques with you because there's 2 extra ones that I think are great techniques. So I want you to have them, even though they're not in the guidebook. There's lots of different tools and strategies and exercises in those workbooks that we're going to go through together, so you'll understand them. They're very simple. And then, of course, there's the biofeedback technology. So when we went for coffee break, tea break, Andrew and I were having a quick chat about HeartMath and research into HeartMath, and what I said was, well, actually, HeartMath is just a combination of different things, a combination of breath work, it's a combination of what you might call positive psychology or CBT or kind of coaching approach, and there's a combination of biofeedback. And actually, there's a lot of research into each of those individual areas, independent research that proves the benefit of coherent breathing or resonant breathing or positive psychology or using biofeedback to retrain the autonomic nervous system. So there's lots of different ways of validating that this system works. So where it all starts, really, I'm going to assume that you've met your client, your patient, or whatever. They're interested in going on this journey, so that's all done. You've agreed the fees or whatever, and so that where we need to start is to come to some sort of agreement around resilience, or if you prefer to use words like thriving or other words, then that's fine as well. But getting people into this state where they're going to be reorientating their life around more renewal, more meaning, and connecting with their heart. So in terms of learning outcomes for this section, now it's not like this is a coaching session, this is a section, and I'll help you understand how you would organize this, and Alan will do the same. He'll provide you with a clear like 4-session journey protocol that you could use. But what we want to do then, just in terms of learning outcomes, is come to some sort of agreed definition of resilience and relate resilience not just to bounce back, but more to energy drain and energy renewal. So that's where we use that battery in a battery metaphor. Do an exercise where we explore those domains of resilience that we looked at briefly yesterday. Help them understand that resilience is all about intelligently managing that. So reducing unnecessary drains and increasing opportunities for renewal, topping up the battery. And then we want to engage in a values exercise, which is why you've got those values cards. We're going to use them in a bit. Okay, so you may well have your own definition of resilience. If you don't, you can use our definition. Apparently the US Navy liked this one so much that they decided to adopt it. So HeartMath's definition was adopted by the US Navy. And our definition is one that includes basically that sort of pre, during and post aspect to resilience. It's not just about the bounce back. Okay, so you could use that definition or use your own, or ask them what they understand resilience to mean. And the important point is that it can be developed. It's something that we can all learn. So let's just engage in this exercise. So the way that I like to do this is I either get the coachee to draw this. Okay, so they get them to draw the 4 circles interconnecting. I have templates as well where I can provide this to people to fill in for themselves. I quite like the idea of getting people to draw things. I think it somehow helps with the memory and embedding the experience. So get them to draw the 4 circles and then label each one physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. So if you could do that, that would be handy. Just somewhere, kind of get a bit of paper.
So where are we now in the books and all that? Which book are we in?
In your slide. Just refer to your slides.
Right, what page are we on there?
Slide 84.
Thank you. I haven't got mine in front of me. Slide 50.
Got it. Right. Sorry about that, Cheers.
Okay. Okay, so if you just label it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to, at the big picture level, we're just going to do a kind of, okay, how physically resilient am I on a scale from 1 to 10? So I want you to ask that question of yourself, and I just want you to give yourself a score from 1 to 10. How physically resilient do you think you are? 1 being not very resilient at all the way through 10 being, super resilient. Okay, so just give yourself a number. Maybe a couple of people, maybe share their numbers. What have you got? And just briefly why you think that you gave yourself that score.
I'd say I was probably a 7. I'm quite sensitive to things like sleep deprivation or alcohol. So if I were to have any of that, then it takes a bit of time to bounce back.
Yeah. Okay.
It also depends what you're like. They're in a way arbitrary without having something to go against. Because, like, I would call myself a 7 now, but if I think about what my absolute 10 would be like, peak performance and everything, I'm probably a 5. But if I think about where I've been at my peak at a good point in my life, then I'm probably a 7.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the problem with an exercise like this is it's not scientific at all, and it really just needs to be. It's like the beginning of a self-awareness process around. Let's just put a number on it. We can decide later on whether it's correct or not. I mean, who even knows? But most people deal in generalizations. So you guys are maybe a bit more sophisticated, but we start with this, general. Okay, physically, how do you think you're doing? Okay, so I'm a 7, I'm a 5, or whatever. So that's fine. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Who knows? And then the next thing to do is say, okay, well, what we need to do is break the physical resilience down into some subdomains. So then we're looking at physical flexibility, we're looking at endurance, we're looking at strength. So what I want you to do now is to mark yourself out of 10 for each of those areas. I said yesterday, I can't touch my toes. Okay, so my physical flexibility is like a 4 out of 10. My endurance is maybe an 8 out of 10. My strength is maybe a 6 out of 10. So for yourself, just again, give yourself some marks against those domains. Try not to think about it too much, just like a gut reaction. Maybe a couple of you again wouldn't mind sharing, please. Who wouldn't mind sharing?
Would you put how physically fit you are here? Sorry.
Sorry, Jeanette?
So endurance, is that kind of how physically fit you are?
Endurance is more like, you know, stamina. So how far could you run? How long could you walk for? You know, that type of thing. Stamina side.
And it doesn't have to be one particular thing, because I could walk for hours, but running.
Yeah. No, it doesn't have to be. It's just, you know, how long can you keep going for, basically?
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's a couple of you. Just give me your numbers.
I'll give you mine. Physical, probably 7. Endurance, 7. Strength is 6 because I've not been swimming and I'm losing strength. So.
Okay, great. Okay, so that's a lovely example. So if there's one area, and Lou's already identified it, is like, you know, that strength is something that could be worked on to optimize physical resilience a little bit more. And it's because you've not been able to go swimming. But what you could recognize, well, I'm not been able to go swimming, so actually, you know, maybe I could just do 15 press-ups a day, or get by myself some like little light weights or kettlebells or something like that, or, you know, anything, doesn't matter. But what you've recognized is actually that part of my physical resilience has dropped back a little bit, though obviously not much. But just in knowing that, there's something you can do about it. So for me, you know, I mean, I will admit that I've known for some time that I'm not physically flexible enough, and I haven't really done anything about it, but at least I know that. And, you know, really I should be doing, you know, more things like kind of yoga or stretching or Pilates or something, because as I'm getting older, it's becoming more and more of an issue, and I recognize that I can pull muscles and things a lot easier than I used to. Anyone else wouldn't mind sharing the numbers, please?
So I'd be a 7 for flexibility, 8 for endurance, and 3 for strength. So similarly, yeah.
Okay, so great. Okay, again, there's a, you know, it's clear to you what, if anything, you could, if you wanted to, you could change and take some actions to improve strength. So that's good. So they've got, you know, a big picture number. They've kind of narrowed it down a little bit now. And then what we want to do is we want to consider everything that's important with regards to physical resilience. And we don't want to limit it to just exercise stuff. Okay, that's obvious for most people. Flexibility, okay, do some yoga or Pilates. Endurance, try going for longer runs. Strength, do some weights. Pretty obvious. But what is all the other stuff that actually is really important for physical resilience? Just shout them out.
Eating and breathing.
Right, eating, breathing. Eating certainly the right types of food, yeah, and balanced diet.
Recovery.
Recovery is really important. Sleeping is probably the most important thing, considering that we can die if we don't get enough of it. Sleeping is absolutely critical, yeah. Nutrition, definitely.
Alcohol consumption, etc.
Well, this is stuff that's supposed to be boosting our resilience, not limiting. But yeah, to put the other side on that is limiting certain types of food or drink that aren't good for our physical resilience. What else is it that we should be doing to optimize physical resilience?
Periods of rest, that goes with recovery.
Yeah, periods of rest. It could also be things like, you know, not sitting down for too long. So periods where you're getting up and moving about.
Detoxifying the body.
Yeah, it could be going through periods of detoxification. Consistency in all of those things.
Exercise.
Yeah, but exercise we kind of covered.
Okay.
Hydration.
Hydration's definitely important. A lot of people don't realize that they're dehydrated until they get really thirsty. That's generally because they've got low interoception. So same with, it seems to be increasing that people aren't getting that information quickly. So, you know, a lot of people only recognize, yeah, I'm really thirsty, gosh, I need to drink, or, oh my goodness, I really need to go to the loo. And it's taken the kind of signals from the body to get really loud before they've recognized, or I'm hungry, things like that.
Could you like address your physical resilience by using one of the other domains? You know, 'cause it's kind of all linked and holistic and all that. So would that be a way?
Yeah, so that's one of the purposes of this exercise, is to help people understand that. Oh, crikey. I think someone needs to turn their mic off. I can hear strange noises. Is the point that actually these are all interlinked, and actually there is a load of stuff that's important for physical resilience that is clearly impacting those other domains. So we're going to build this picture up. So I mean, like, yeah, the locations of your exercise could be important as well. We know that exercising outdoors in nature, you know, green and blue spaces is really important. That also impacts on mental and emotional as well, of course. Daylight, you know, sunlight, more and more evidence that this is important, and that people are spending too much time indoors or not in enough bright light because we're indoors. So we want to build up this list of things that are important, the drivers of the resilience. So they're the domains that we can see on the screen, but there's all these different drivers that are important. And then what that enables people to do is to recognize, okay, well, I might want to, if these different domains, I want to increase my physical flexibility, but actually now that we've laid it out there, I can see that I probably don't get enough sleep, so I could focus on that. There's a couple of days a week when I work away from home and I recognize that I don't eat as healthily then, so I could do something about that. I recognize that I can go a couple of days at a time without actually going outdoors. That's not good for me, so I could do something about that. So we're just beginning to build up this picture where people could make decisions. Now, even with my example, you know, I haven't actually done anything about my lack of physical flexibility. I still just keep riding my bike and running, but maybe I will at some point, you know. So get the idea? Yes, no? Okay. We'll move on to mental then. So what I want you to do now is give yourselves a score out of 10 for your perception of your mental resilience. I know it's a generalization, but just give yourself a score.
Sorry, Gavin, yeah, maybe I missed the bit, but did we say that this is, we're giving ourselves a score where we are right now, or where we are generally over a past week, month, or year?
Well, I mean, you know, that's again a kind of challenge with this exercise is the time domains. I'd kind of like consider yourself over the last, you know, month, 2 months, something like that. You know, maybe today is indicative of how you've been in general, or maybe just having a bad day or whatever. But I think like the general you, if we think of ourselves less in terms of like the weather version of ourselves, where the weather can change all of the time, think of yourselves more in terms of the climate version of yourselves. So the general kind of trend of you, if that's helpful.
That is excellent example. Thank you.
Oh, good. It came to me. It wasn't from here. It came from the field. Okay, so give yourself a number. Yeah, well, hopefully. So then what I'd like to do now is to break that down. Remember, a lot of people just use this mental toughness measure of mental resilience, and it's not the full picture. So give yourself some marks of flexibility, attention span, focus, and your ability to incorporate multiple points of view. Okay, who wouldn't mind sharing that, please? What numbers have you got? Give me your overall mental score, and then give me the subdomain scores.
Okay. So mental flexibility. I'm just a bit confused on that. So attention span and focus, I've given really low, about 4, because I'm terrible. I'm really easily distracted. Incorporate multiple points of view. I'd say I'm up there with about a 9, because I think that's really important to me. It's like a really high value. When you say flexibility, what do you mean? The ability to switch from?
Yeah, switching, multitasking, things like that.
Okay. Yeah, and that's hard because I'm a mum, so I have to do it whether I like it or not.
Yeah, well, I'm
But
not
it's
saying
how
that
good
you
I'm at.
like it, but because you're a mum, you probably are good at it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say I need to be in 3 different heads at the same time sometimes. But
Yeah.
for me, I think 2 of them are really low and 2 of them are high.
Okay, so that's great, because that's the
Yeah.
purpose of this. Because actually, in order to be truly mentally resilient, we do need to be able to switch between these different abilities. I'm the same, right? Because of the way they run the business, I'm always switching, and so that flexibility is fine. What I find harder is the focus.
Yeah, that's what mine is.
Yeah, but it's an important part of my job. I do need to be able to focus on things.
Yeah.
Park the flexibility, do the focus, but it's an area that I struggle with. So for me, that's an area of my mental resilience that I need to work on.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah. Okay. So that's great because you know that.
I identified that.
Okay. So everyone else has got their scores, hopefully. What are the drivers of these domains? Given, of course, that probably everything in the physical domain is also important for the mental. We know exercise is, we know sleep is, we know correct nutrition is, we know hydration is. But what else would you put into that domain as being important?
I think where you put your attention, and so how you spend your time.
Absolutely. What's your mental diet? Are you just watching TikTok videos all day, or are you, reading books, watching documentaries, what are you engaging in? What's your mental diet? So 100%, yeah.
Energy flows where the attention goes, or whatever the phrase is.
Exactly. That is the phrase.
Your environment is probably quite important. So like nature or quiet rooms to work or...
Definitely, yeah. What's going on in the environment?
Just having a think about this. The attention span and focus, if I'm in a meeting or at work, I can actually do that. But if I'm doing something which is outside of work, but still interesting, I lose the attention span and the focus. So for me, it's definitely, if I'm in a formal environment, I make the effort. If it's informal, even though it's something that interests me, I'm a bit sort of ADHD, I think.
Yeah, well, but this is great. That's the whole purpose of this, is to raise your level of self-awareness, so that in recognizing that you have the potential to do something about it. But when people don't have an awareness of it, then they can't change your behavior. So the first step to behavior change is self-awareness.
Maybe
doesn't mean you're going to do it. Sorry, Miriam.
That's right. Maybe trying to connect ourselves with the inner inside, and also with the, I don't know, some people may call it spiritual or divine, or trying to be more elevated mentally, and maybe reflect, maybe take some time to focus in the inside in, then reflect it out. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that whole, reflective practice is part of this domain. But again, a lot of people don't engage in that because their attention's external. And I use the example of TikTok, but there's always something in the world that we live in that we can put our attention on. And when our attention is external and on something else, it's not internal. So one of the deficits that's creating is this lack of interoception, but it's also creating a lack of self-awareness, because people are not going inside and working out, who am I? Why am I doing this? What's important to me? That's not happening as much.
What about diet and timing? Because I split them out, because some things can be good for you, but they can also, food-wise, but then they can also sap your ability to maybe think as cognitively and just be as present, because your body's digesting whatever it is you've just eaten.
Yeah, absolutely. So the food stuff is important in the physical domain, but then it also plays into the mental. And whilst something like something with a bit of glucose in it's going to help your short-term physical performance, it will also help your short-term mental performance, but then you're going to crash, aren't you? So again, it's about that balance of nutrition, That's really important, and you know, making sure that you have certain nutrients that are important for the brain as well.
I think stillness is very important for mental health as well, because you need to give the body and the brain time to integrate.
So stillness, so things like meditation, mindfulness are important in the mental domain as well. Yeah.
I always like to look at it. Oh, sorry, go on.
What about the type of company you keep? So the toxicity. So if you're in an environment where people are quite negative or toxic, I mean, it's in a compassionate way. Sometimes we're in the wrong environments with people that are not healthy for us.
Yep.
Friendships, relationships, work environments.
Absolutely, 100%. The company that you keep, the people that are around you, which of course would also spill into the emotional domain and probably over here as well.
I
So,
often
yeah.
look at it as whether you are consuming or whether you're creating. So watching TV is consumption. Just being on Facebook is a consumption. Creating is, you know, it's the reading, it's the music, it's or creating music, but painting, whatever.
Definitely, yeah.
Empathy and communication. If you're more in line, you're more able to communicate with people from different diverse ideas or notions or systems, and empathic and coherent communication is
Yeah, and certainly that from that incorporating multiple points of view, you know, in order to be able to do that, you have to seek out different points of view, and then you have to be able to, you know, to work out, you know, well, why might this person think or feel that, and why do I think and feel what I think and feel, and how might we be able to find some commonality here to incorporate it? Okay, so great. Now, so, you know, many people find the physical bit easier. Some people can do the mental bit. You move over to emotional, and a lot of people completely struggle. So let's do this again. Give yourself a score for your level of emotional resilience. Just think about, you know, last month or two. And then what we'll do, now you've got this kind of meta score, is we'll break that down to the extent to which you think you have emotional flexibility. So you feel lots of different types of feelings and emotions. Remember, we're not about suppressing or anything like that, but you've got flexibility between them. The extent to which you perceive you've got a relatively positive outlook without being unrealistically optimistic. And the extent to which you perceive that you can self-regulate. And again, maybe someone wouldn't mind sharing their scores, please.
I got 8, 8 and 7 for that.
Okay, cool.
Because emotional flexibility, because of obviously lots of things that I do outside of, you know, obviously doing this as well. You have to be able to be a chameleon for yourself and for other people. Positive outlook. I've not had a negative outlook on anything for ages. And I'm always learning. They say if you stop learning, you know, that's the end of you, basically. You sort of crash and burn. So I'm continuously learning. I'm reading all the time as well. So, and obviously moving from the mental, some of the stuff in there actually is in that positive outlook. I listen to other people's points of view. I rationalize, you know, with my point of view, and we come to an accord as opposed to an agreement. You know, and obviously self-regulation with that as well. Pretty much, I can check myself. So as soon as I know I'm getting to a certain state, and again, that's probably because of the heart math I've been doing for the last couple of years, that I can recognize it before it goes too far, and I can bring myself back to a point of obviously alignment, which, you know, pretty much goes together. So I'm pretty high on the other two, apart from self-regulation, obviously, where sometimes you miss out in it. We do blow up sometimes, and, you know, things catch us by surprise when we've got 20 things going on at once. So 8, 8, 7 for those.
Cool. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Anyone else, please?
Yeah, I'll have a go, Gavin. Overall, 7, flexibility 7, positive outlook 8, self-regulation 6. So I kind of scored that down because I think that I know what to do and I do it, but I'm not always so confident that it kind of produces the result in the time frame that I'm kind of looking for. So if I'm kind of having a bad day, kind of low energy, maybe kind of low mood, I sometimes have to, my self-regulation will be awareness of that and acceptance but I won't necessarily be able to shift it easily.
Yeah.
Sometimes I will with some like exercise and movement, but other times I have to sit in that funk for the whole day and hope tomorrow is a better day.
Yeah.
And that'll be that. So
yeah,
that's why I gave myself a 6.
Okay, great, that's fine. Yeah, and just to clarify, it's okay to feel like that sometimes, and just to recognise that I just feel like it today. There's a reason for it, which I may or may not know about. Tomorrow will probably be different based on my experience of this in the past. So, yeah, we don't necessarily need to be trying to regulate all of the time. It's only when it's getting in the way or it's draining the battery too much that it becomes important. So, but probably the majority of people that you're going to be working with won't be scoring quite as high in this domain. So there's the scores, and then obviously everything again from the physical and the mental that we've covered already is important here. What else is there for the emotional domain, would you say, that's an important driver? How can we kind of actively seek out ways to be more emotionally resilient?
I think with for me, it's more my stronger area in terms of resilience, because I am a primary school teacher, so like all the time dealing with kids' emotions and their inability to self-regulate. So I've had a lot of practice in this domain. So, helping other people regulate their emotions can lead you to understand and regulate your own.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. And actually kind of just helping other people is a great way to gain emotional resilience, top your battery up there, because it feels good to do it. So, things like helping others, volunteering, acts of kindness are really great for boosting this domain. What else is important here for
self-talk?
Sorry, Andrew, say that again.
Self-talk.
Self-talk.
Self-talk. So are you saying
self-talk? Sorry, mate. Yes.
Are you saying positive things to yourself, or are you kind of slightly berating yourself for not putting the washing machine on when you should have done? Are you, is that a bit of an oversight, or are you a bit of a fool because you didn't do it? That kind of thing.
Definitely, yeah. Self-talk, compassion for self, all those types of things. Definitely, which a lot of people just don't have compassion for themselves, and a lot of people treat themselves really roughly and push themselves extremely hard.
I found just through the compassion training, I know the touching the heart, a gesture of kindness, or some words that you would offer to a good friend. That's a really good way of bringing the dialing down. If you're feeling a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's actually some evidence that just putting your hand on your heart can release oxytocin. So there's a real physiological advantage of just doing that. Yeah, being with other people. I mean, intimacy. Both kind of intimacy in terms of thoughts and feelings, and intimacy in terms of physical intimacy. We're social creatures, and we benefit from that closeness. We benefit from hugging and skin on skin and touch and those types of things. And sometimes people can find themselves in a point in their lives where that, for whatever reason, the intimacy isn't available, and so that can be a drain on the battery.
What about walks in nature? I know, because that's mine. I know when I get stressed, I get noise sensitive. As soon as I'm noise sensitive, I go for a walk in the woods, and then I'm fine.
Yeah, definitely. And again, that's going to be physically beneficial, mentally beneficial, emotionally. Yeah, and there's quite a bit of research that does show the boost that your mood is boosted when you go when you experience green and blue places. And there's actually research that uses HRV as the measure, and you get more vagal activity when you're in nature. And nature, if you go into nature and you stop the normal just thinking about loads of other stuff and not really paying attention, but if you can go into nature and try and connect with it and like feel awe, for example, at nature or trees, all the patterns that you see, the colors that you see, and all those types of things, then that can be hugely beneficial in this.
Yeah, I find it really helpful for the kids as well. Sorry. So we always talk about the different colors and what we can see, smell, hear, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, from the other ways of dealing with empathy, i.e. to reduce empathy. I would take on other people's feelings very, very quickly.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So actually, we have we make a distinction between care and overcare, which I think is what you're talking about. And So care is very, very healthy. Care on the grid, you know, the 4-box model thing. Care sits clearly in the bottom right-hand box, and care is good for you and it's good for other people. But overcare is very different. Overcare puts you basically over the left-hand side. Sometimes you can overcare and it's an anxiety overcare. Sometimes you overcare and it's a doom and gloom depression form of overcare. So that's a tricky one, because a lot of people don't make the distinction. They're just like, well, I care, and caring's really important. Yeah, caring is really important, but there are types of care, and healthy care is great. Overcare is not good for you, and it's not good for the recipient of your care either. So I do think that coherence practice can help with that. But you know, it's clearly a big area of challenge for many people, especially with an aging population. And a lot of us, like, well, you know this, Paul, better than any of us, is, you know, we're caring for people that we love, and that can be tough.
Yeah.
What else is helpful for this area?
I've learned that self-awareness and becoming aware of my own emotions really helped me to distinguish between that overcare and self-care. And self-awareness for me was between the boxes as well, and when I'm there was the big breakthrough for me in self-regulation as well.
Yeah. So just kind of reflecting on emotions. Most people don't have a high level of emotional self-awareness. They can't really distinguish how they feel, and they generalize, like, I feel good or I feel bad or happy or sad. But you know, there's all of these different types of emotions, and most people do find it hard to identify them. So just doing that work like you've done is a great way of building some resilience there. Miriam, I think you were going to say something, weren't you?
I'm trying to say basically to be thankful for life, for what we have, for who we are, and don't take in life by granted. Most of the time we take life as granted, but it's not granted. It's just painful. If we sort of develop a mental strength to be thankful every single day, we will help ourselves to get into the emotional flexibility and positive outlook and outcome, regardless.
Yeah, definitely. And there's certainly a strong body of research around gratitude. Berkeley University have the Centre for Gratitude, always publishing fascinating bits of research. So yeah, they're all hugely beneficial. Okay, so then we move on to the last one. So call it spiritual, call it existential. You know, I'm not talking about religion here, unless you have a faith, in which case I am talking about religion here. But this is the stuff that's more like, you know, big picture. So this is the extent to which you might have some flexibility around your identity, your purpose, the extent to which you have a sense of meaning in your life, the extent to which you know what your values are and how you might live those values or commit to them in your life, and the extent to which you can kind of be okay with other people who are very different to you, so tolerance of others. So just give yourselves...
Just check, can everyone else read that slide, because that's gone all grainy for me. Is that just my internet connection?
I don't know, can others read it?
Can others see it?
Yes, for me it's very clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, just give yourself some scores. And again, you guys are, I don't think, going to be typical of the average member of the population, because you wouldn't be here if you were. So you might have very different scores to the average person. But yeah, just shout them out who wouldn't mind sharing their scores for these.
What would you say defining spiritual flexibility as?
For me, that's just about not being, you know, 100% set in this idea of who you are. So like and recognizing that you grow and you change and you evolve in your consciousness.
Like managing dogma and that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's a dogma thing. Yeah, it's like not being rigidly locked into this is what this is all about and this is how it works. There is only one way, and it's just written in this book. You know.
Okay, thanks.
I'd say 9 on 10 for me.
Yeah,
I would say same.
Yeah. Oh, we'll tease them out for each of those levels.
I couldn't get any difference between the levels. I put 9s
Okay.
for them all.
Yeah, cool. Okay, that's fine.
Same here. Maybe just 8 and 10 for tolerance. Just some tricky beliefs I struggle with. So just aware of that.
Great. Okay, but look, it's great because you are able to distinguish, even if like the scores are all really high, which I would appreciate for many people in the room. They're going to be, because you've been doing this work for a long time. You can still see that there's areas where there could be a little bit more work to be done. Our perspective is that you can't really be optimizing this space unless you're doing pretty well in the others. And our perspective is that the emotional domain is one that's available to people, like literally moment to moment, to make some adjustments. You can't necessarily be optimizing physical and mental stuff all of the time, but emotions, you can shift them and change them. You can reduce them, you can increase them. And certainly, there's a strong connection between the emotional resilience side of things and the spiritual as well. All of this stuff is important as a foundation for the spiritual. What else is there that we can do to nurture that part of ourselves?
Sense of belonging, I think, is important. Communities, sharing themes or things like this. Community of heart math people.
Yeah, definitely. What else?
I think there's a really strong importance for values here, because if you ignore your own values all the time, it weakens the system at a subconscious level.
Definitely. And that's why in this process we're going to go into a values exercise, because a lot of people just haven't explored this space at all and they need somewhere to start. So a values exercise is a great place to start there. But yeah, what's important to you? And challenging that as well. Why is it important to you? Success is important to me. Why is it important to you? Because it is. Why is it important to you? Because my dad told me I'd never come to anything and I want to prove him wrong. Or because my dad was really successful and I want to be like him. Or because I admire this person or that person, I want to be like them. Or a lot of people haven't, and I didn't for most of my life, didn't think about what was important to me or why it would be or where that belief came from. It's just kind of like an assumed presupposition about something without really challenging it and asking where it came from.
Values, for me, and my experience of them, really impact the others. So if someone's asking me to do, so wellness is a big value to me, so I won't compromise on that. In especially at the moment with what's going on, I'll go, no, I don't compromise on that. That's a key value. So it gives us direction and focus. So links into the physical, mental, and emotional, in my experience.
Yeah, definitely.
I think approaching fears and approaching difficulties, being okay to be in difficult discomfort situations is really, I think it taps into this area, because then it begs the question of who you are and what you stand for.
Yeah, not avoiding that stuff. Yeah,
I agree with that. Kind of similar to the emotional resilience, like what helped me with my emotional resilience is like personal life trauma. Even though it's very difficult, you build yourself back up. It's like the physical domain, you break down your muscles to build them back stronger, and if you can do that, that can really help, but it can also go wrong as well too.
Definitely, those types of experiences that often begin to initiate this space, isn't it? When you experience something in life that kind of wakes you up to what is actually important.
Would meditation and everything fit in here as well? That's how.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely. I mean, the meditation also fits into the mental and the emotional. Well, meditation fits into physical as well, but for sure, meditation can lead to, types of experiences, peak experiences that can help the spiritual or existential part of you emerge.
Yeah.
What do you think about like a willingness to want to let go, because some or like of whatever it is you're attached to, or just willingness to just look up to the skies and wonder, and all of these sorts of, I suppose, existential questions that actually, if you're not even willing to just look, you won't find growth in that area.
Absolutely, just that general openness to
This would be
other
really hard
potentials.
for people that are very religious, wouldn't it? That have been
Depends
brought
on
up.
the nature of
Yeah, and
your
household.
religious belief. Yeah, I mean, you know, yeah, if your religious belief comes from a perspective of, dear God, I promise to be a good boy or a good boy or a good girl, please look after me. It's like that kind of like trading thing. Then I would suggest that
Yeah.
that's not necessarily healthy. Whereas if you try to build more of a kind of, I don't know, a relationship with God or I don't know. I don't really have a lens of a religion, so it's harder for me to say. I know I don't want to condemn religion or anything like that. You know, I think it just depends upon the relationship you have with your faith and with your God or whatever.
Because I think values and belief, isn't it by the age you're 7? There's a lot is set in stone. I'm sure it's by the age of 7. A lot of your values and beliefs the rest of your life will be impacted on everything you've learned up to the age of 7.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, kids are
Sure,
very
yeah.
impressionable, aren't they? Children believe most things that adults tell them, so that would be true.
Yeah.
Jeanette, I think perhaps, was it the Dalai Lama who said, give me a 7-year-old boy and I'll show you the man? To that very point.
There we go.
Yeah. I haven't heard that, but yeah, I've heard a lot about that. Really
I don't think that's the Dalai Lama necessarily. I think that was
think
written in old scriptures long before.
It's
Maybe an original Lama.
Yeah, ancient
Behaviorists as well. Watson said that. Behaviorists, because they believed in the slate, you know, mind is a blank slate.
Would the intuition fit inside spiritual as well? Because obviously, you know, when things happen and you think that's a bit strange, a coincidence and stuff. So that's that sort of thing also.
Yeah, and again, it depends what we mean by intuition, because people argue about what it is and whether it exists or not or whatever. But yeah, and I think you could probably fit that into the mental and the emotional side as well. But for me, yeah, that part of me, as I've sort of discovered it, then more of that type of stuff has popped up, the synchronicities, you know, those types of things. So look, let's bring this down to kind of like the practical level. We've just been through that exercise together. To what extent do you think you could, you know, lead someone else through that exercise in the way that I've just done it with you? How confident are you that you could do that with someone else?
From 1 to 10?
Okay, yeah, why not? We were doing
Being 10 the high?
Yeah.
I will say 11 to myself.
Hey,
Is that too
it's your turn to show off. That's great.
Is that too eager or to show off or to trustworthy of what my faith and my love towards you guys and humanity and my patience and compassion and give a fruit from my inner inside? Because we can talk and talk and talk. It's like a tree. If I don't see fruit in the tree, it is not worth it. So
I like that.
Fruits from inside. So we just grab the apple or the lemon and said, oh gosh, this beautiful tree is giving beautiful fruits. I think I would put myself 11.
Excellent.
So,
and I believe you, just from the way you're saying it.
Free of charge, guys.
Yeah.
I don't charge you.
Hey.
I would say, for me, I would say maybe 10 as well, because it's not about me, it's about the client and the person I'm coaching. So it's all them, they're in the spotlight. I'm just there to, you know, help put the light on them and hold it.
Great.
I'd say a lot lower than that, because I haven't got a lot of experience of coaching and working one-to-one with adults, so I need a lot of practice to get good at this, I think.
Okay, so look, what I'd say there is don't get caught up in this kind of like idea of what coaching is.
Yeah.
I know the coach, you know, to be kind of like an official coach, you've got to have a qualification or whatever. I'll tell you one thing, right? Before I became a coach, before I discovered HeartMath, and I passed my qualifications and all of that, and I know all the models, and I wrote my dissertation, blah, I was not even 10% of the coach that I became once I started to practice coherence. Being coherent will make you naturally of best service to other people. You don't need to worry about models, and it's like when you're coherent, you just know what to say, what to ask, when not to speak. It flows. Okay, so I don't think you need to hold any tension around that. What you've got here with this exercise is a framework which can be used to ask some questions, and the questions are as simple as, from the heart, What do you think they mean by physical resilience? What score would you give yourself? Okay, let's break it down a little bit. What about stamina, endurance, flexibility? Do you do? What scores would you give yourself there? Why would you say that? How would you draw? You know, what would you do in practical terms? How do you create this resilience and top your battery up? Yeah, I don't think you need to be concerned about
Well, I think I'd
having
have
the badge.
I'd have a go and all that, and I'll get better. But it's early days for me, I guess. As well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, as a framework, are you clear on what we've just done?
Would you learn, like, with when you ask them, do you get enough sleep? Would you think we would have to we need some figures to say no, how much sleep do I need? Would we kind of, or am I going too into
You
it?
could do. I mean, it depends. You know, again, I think when you're coherent, you know what you should labour and what you should just move on from. But if someone says, "Yeah, I think you get enough sleep," and you get a sense, well, maybe they don't. You might want to say to them, "Well, how much sleep do you get?" "Oh, I get 6 hours every night." Okay, well, what makes you think that 6 hours is enough? Because generally, you know, the recommended amount is kind of 7 to 9.
Yeah.
Most people are at about 8 hours. Yes, some people need less, and some people need more. But for most people, it's around about that, 8 hours. So what makes you think that 6 is enough? Or you might, you know, if you might say, well, the amount of time you sleep is partly important, but actually the quality of sleep is what's really important. So you could have a bottle of wine before bed, go to bed and sleep for 9 hours, but that doesn't mean that the quality of your sleep's any good. I mean, I know because I've done one of those 36-hour HRV measurement things, and I drank, a fair bit of alcohol. I never got any parasympathetic renewal that night at all, but slept for 9 hours. Didn't get any renewal. So if you just use the measure of how many hours, that's only half the picture. So again, we're not prescriptive with all the questions that you should ask, because there is no should. There's like a flexibility, there's a loose model to get some information, raise some self-awareness, and then you would use your own sense of what's important to explore to ask those questions. It would be different for different people. Daniel, you were just going to ask something.
I don't want to segue too much, but what you just said there, when you did a 36-hour, including sleep coherence, how did you do that?
No, it wasn't coherence. It was just HRV measurement.
So how did you know when you didn't get any parasympathetic rest?
Because I get a report that's covered in red and blue, which distinguishes whether you're in sympathetic or parasympathetic.
Was that a device I can buy, or is that something you did as part of something?
It's something I can do for you, or you can train with a company called First Beat, and you can be accredited to use that thing. It's useful for lifestyle stuff and just helps people realize things like alcohol really seriously interferes with your sleep, for example. So it's helpful. I mean, I can put you in touch with them. I have a relationship with them. I've done their training and I've got their kit. We use it in HeartMath for like clinical stuff as well.
I want to buy what I've been looking at sleep devices, but I don't want one that transmits at night. I don't want to be wearing like Bluetooth. So I'm trying to find something like that, and I want to get a brainwave.
Well, this is an ECG that you wear for 36 hours, and it records, and then you can just download. I've got a system, you download it into your computer, and it generates reports. But we can talk about that.
We'll chat later.
That separately. Cool. Yeah. Okay, right. So what we're going to do now in the next hour leading up to lunch is you're going to be going away and engaging in an exercise. So you'll have time for another quick little break if you like. But what I want to do is share the exercise with you. So you're going to be using your values cards. Okay, so let me just talk you through what you're going to be doing.
Gavin, I don't have any values cards. I was going to ask about this before.
You don't have them either?
No.
Was your package open when you received it?
Is this where the kit arrives? The same package as the Transforming Stress board?
No, it was the package with the workbooks.
Oh no, I haven't received that. I did let you know about that, but
the workbooks, yeah. Oh right, okay. So that's why you haven't. Okay, Glenn, I'm going to email you a document, and you're just going to need to be pretty swift with your scissors to cut these cards out.
I'll do my best. Yeah, that's no problem.
Okay. Well. Oh, hang on. It means you don't have the instructions as well. I will email you the instructions. You'll be able to do this. Don't worry. You might just need to be a bit pacey. Actually, hang on a sec. Can I just check, has everyone else got their values cards and the instructions?
Where's the instructions? Is it in the pack with them?
Yeah, the instructions were with the workbooks. So when you got the card, workbooks, there's some pieces of, but they might be stuck between some of the workbooks.
Yeah.
But there's instructions there. That's it. You got it. You got it all there, Glenn. I'm going to send all this to you. You'll have it. Don't worry. Right. Let me just go back into screen. I just want to describe what you need to do. So, what you're going to do is the next exercise. You're going to identify your personal core values, and then what we'll do together. So this is after you've done that. I'll talk you through the process of doing that in a sec. We'll then come back together, and you'll recall an experience of your values. We will describe it, so we will experience it in physiological and behavioural terms. I'm just going to ask a couple of you to volunteer to do this. The rest of you can do it for yourselves. And then what we're going to do is we can consider how our values relate to our energy renewal or energy drain, which is basically whether if we're getting fulfilment of them or not, will be indicating whether they are renewing us or draining us. If we're not getting fulfilment, then there's going to be a drain. So let me just set up the exercise first of all, because we'll come back and do that together. What you're going to do is you've got, within your cards, you've got 3 at the top underneath the title one. They're grayed out. One says very important to me, one says important to me, one says not important to me. And what I want you to do is I want you to find some space, so either grovel around on the floor or clear a table and make sure you've got enough space. But what I want you to do is I just want you to do heart-focused breathing, and I want you to put down every single one of those cards under the heading that is most appropriate. So is this thing very important to you? Is it important to you, or is it not important to you? Don't over-intellectualize, don't let the brain get in the way, just use your state of coherence to inform your decision, and just put the cards down and do it as quickly as you can. So don't overemphasize any, overanalyze. When you've done that, take a look at them all. Just do a quick sense check. You could take a photo if you want, if you're interested. And then just get rid of everything apart from those that are under the very important to me pile. Then what I want you to do is look at your very important to me pile and prioritize it. Get rid of everything apart from what you think are the top 7. Then I'd like you to just look at those 7 and really challenge yourself. Say, why are those things important to me? Are they really my values, or have they come from somewhere else? And if there's anything that you recognize as a bit of a fraud or sneaked in there, but actually it's not your value, it's your parents or your siblings or your friends or your faiths or whatever, get rid of it, put another one back in. And then what I want you to do, the final step, is to check the priority order by basically going through each one and saying, well, if I could have that one or that one, that one or that one, which would I choose? So hypothetically kind of trading, forcing choice between them. Okay, so the full instructions are in that document that you've got. It leads you through it. I just wanted to give you an overview of how it's going to work. And what I need you to end up with by 12:30, please, is your prioritized list of 7 values. And we'll come back together at 12:30. Make sense?
Yes.
Yeah? Cool. So you just need 7 most important values.
You said you can remove some, and you've got the list of 7, so you might have less than 7. Is that right?
No, you bring a couple back in. So you're going to have more than 7 in your very important to me pile.
Yeah.
So what I would do is get your 7, leave the rest kind of nearby, and then if you see ones in the 7, you're like, actually no, that isn't. That's my dad's. Take it out and get one of the other very important to me ones and pop it in there. Okay.
We need to read the whole instructions, or can we just follow that slide you've given me?
You can just follow what I said, or if you prefer the detail, then the instructions are there for you.
I'm good with me.
Cool. All right. I'll see you all at 12:30. Glenn, I'm going to fire 2 documents over to you in email right now. And if you're super swift with some scissors, you'll be able to get this done. I'm sorry that you didn't have your pack. We'll track it for you right now. Okay. All right. See you at 12:30. It is important. It's always important, Sharam. Keep it coming.
Okay.
You're my savior.
That's okay.
I'm my savior. What is the block I've got with recording? I should just let it run and just edit them. That's what I should do. Would someone mind sharing their 7 values with me, please? Just so I can use this example. Who wouldn't mind?
I'll share mine if you want.
Thank you very much. Okay, so can you start with what you perceive to be the top one and then go all the way around? So what have you got?
Ecology.
Ecology. Oh dear.
Adventure.
Yep.
Flexibility. Hope.
Yep.
Dependability.
Dependent or dependability?
Dependability.
Ah, neither. Okay.
Yeah.
You just recognised, everyone, that spelling is not my strong suit. What
I
else?
struggle as well. Growth.
Growth. Yep.
Simplicity.
Simplicity. Okay, so there we go. Thank you very much. Got all the values there. And what I want you to do now is just give me a score from 1 to 10 to the extent to which you perceive that you are having fulfillment of that value. So for each one.
Okay, based on whatever I want to be at. Okay.
Yeah, based on kind of like, you know, the last kind of 3 to 6 months or whatever.
8.
So we're starting with ecology, yeah? 8.
Yeah, starting with ecology at 8.
Yeah.
7.
Yep.
9.
Yep.
9.
Yep.
8.
Yep.
8.
Yep.
7.
Okay. Thanks, Daniel. So we can see here all of the different values. We've got the degree of fulfillment that Daniel's been experiencing. I'd suggest again that probably, you know, just because of the nature of the types of people we are and the work that we do, our numbers might be higher than the average person. So don't necessarily expect your clients or coaches to have such high numbers. But already, even though, you know, Daniel's obviously doing pretty well, we can see that there's a couple of areas where there's some potential for maybe seeing if there's something that we could do to raise the number a bit. So that's one thing we need to bear in mind. The other thing to bear in mind with this is to ensure protection of what's already there. So all of this stuff's important to Daniel, and it basically is topping up his battery. Yeah, so Daniel will be in a good place if he's getting most of this stuff. And so it's important to try and protect it. So let's imagine it was a different person and like family was a clear value, okay, and it was a high score. And this person had been offered the opportunity to take a job. It was like, you know, a great job, they'd be interested in it, and there was a significant pay rise, but it meant that they had to go and work in Saudi Arabia for a year. They couldn't take their family with them, and there was limited time when they could come back and see their family. Okay, so that's a decision that needs to be made, and the decision needs to be made consciously and with appreciation of other things that are important in life. If you know that family is really, really important to you, then it enables you to make that decision. It might also be that success or achievement's important to you, but if you're conscious about those values and you're aware of, you know, what you're getting fulfillment and what you're not getting fulfillment of, or what the impact might be of not getting fulfillment of something that's really important to you for a period of time, it can make it easier to make a decision. I'm not saying that it necessarily, the decision won't come without a cost, because all decisions can come with a cost. But in that case, it might be that you decide, well, I am going to go to Saudi Arabia for a year. I know I'm going to miss my family because they're so important to me, but I know it's for a finite period of time and that there will be benefits that I think at this point will outweigh the cost, so I'm going to do it. Or it might be that you decide, well, it's a great job and all that, but you know what? I just don't want to be away from my family. And so I'm going to pass the opportunity up. But at least it's a conscious decision. Quite often people make unconscious decisions, and then that's why it can cause them problems. So in Daniel's case, you know, it's not like there's a serious issue or anything. Is there anything though that you think, just looking at this, that could potentially be under threat given other things that are going on in your life at the moment that you might want to highlight?
Direct question to me.
Yeah.
They're not. They were under threat, I suppose, to use that same language. But I'm now moved more into a space where they're all on up. Like Simplicity, for example, a year ago probably would have been a 3. But in less than a year, I hope for that to be like we're totally simplifying everything down. So that's the big one that I've been working on this last year. Adventure for a long time was probably down at like a 4 or a 5. It's recently spiking back up again. So I'm just out of a under threat period.
Yeah, cool. Okay, perfect. All right. Now, the next thing that we're going to do then, so we can also then identify a couple that might be leveraged a bit. So in this case, it's adventure or simplicity. So Daniel could be thinking about, well, they're in a good place, but what might I be able to do to increase them further? So you can have some ideas around that. The other thing we want to do is to get Daniel to talk about one of these values. And the purpose of that is basically to illustrate a state shift. So Daniel, can you pick one of the higher ones? Can you pick something that's like an 8 or a 9?
I'll pick ecology. Probably.
You pick ecology. Okay, so we got an 8 for that. Talk to me about an experience where you recognise I'm having fulfilment of ecology. What was happening? What was going on? Just share it with me, please.
So I do a lot of ceremony work, and so when I do the ceremonies and I'm out in nature, like there's a deep appreciation and reverence and a deeper understanding of harmony and what it means to be in balance with all things. And when I'm working through these ceremonies, again, it's a very visceral or palpable experience of understanding that I'm not me, I'm not my body, that we're all part of oneness of everything. And the more I do these things, the more I really begin to understand that. And so when I go through these experiences, they're very deeply touching and long lasting.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, what did you all notice as Daniel was talking?
Daniel's facial expressions changed, his hands movement, his listen mode exceeded a little bit more. His voice, tone of his voice changed. He appears to be sincere and sincere to connected to himself.
I think it's also connecting to the moment. There was actually re-going through that moment in his mind as well as he was speaking, because his eyes kept flicking as if he was looking at something in that moment.
Yeah, there was definitely a connection with the experience, which obviously he's not there now. He's not there now, but he went back into an experience. Yeah. Anyone else notice anything else?
He really dropped into his body as well, so very grounded.
Yeah, very grounded, dropped into body. So basically, in short, there was a state shift, wasn't there? From the state prior, then I asked a question, and then he went into a different state. And that state was, I would suggest, if we were measuring his heart rhythms, they would have changed and they would have become more coherent. But it was certainly very authentic state. We could hear that in the voice. Did you believe him when he was talking? Yeah, because when you're in that and you're talking about something that's important and it's authentic, it comes from a different part of you, doesn't it? It resonates. And when it resonates, it is kind of like infectious to others. It grabs our attention, and it's very easy to listen to people when they speak like that. It's like, even though Daniel's just a little square on a screen full of 23 other people, we're connected. So it's an interesting exercise to do with your client, because when you ask them to do that, always ask them to talk about something that they are getting fulfillment of. Okay, that's a high one. And when they do it and they talk about it, they will go into that state. Well, not always. Sometimes you might need to facilitate it a little bit more, but generally it happens. And then the question is, when you're talking to me, what did you notice? A lot of the time people are like, yeah, I feel good, or like I really felt like connected to that. Sometimes people are a little bit more cut off from their body and they don't notice, in which case that's when you need to reflect back and say, well, didn't you? Wow, because when you were talking, it just like you came alive and your voice was in a different place, and I really felt connected. I could even imagine like being there with you when you were doing your ceremony. Sometimes we need to reflect it back to them, but generally they get it first time. And when you reflect it back, they go, oh yeah, okay, I recognize now that I entered a different state. And the point of that is that whilst you might have facilitated it as the coach, or whilst I might have kind of facilitated it by asking Daniel to do it, the fact is that he did it, and he could also do it himself through his own volition. He could have just chosen at that point in time to connect with that thing that's important to him and to go into that memory of the ceremony, the practice, and the being of it. Okay. So with our client, that's kind of the first experience that they'll have of recognizing that they can shift state and that it can feel good. Just a couple of little warnings. Sometimes when you ask people to talk about something, sometimes they can just start talking about not having it. They go into a negative, which is why I always never pick something that's low. I mean, Daniel didn't have anything that was really low anyway, but if you pick something that's low, then it's unlikely to put people into a positive state shift. Sometimes they can talk about that they haven't had it, and then you would just say, well, hang on a minute. What I would like you to do is to recall the time when you did have it, when you were experiencing it, and what was it like? Or they may perhaps have never experienced it, so you can sometimes have a value around something that, like family, for example, is another classic where some people have a value around family because they just didn't really have that when they were growing up. They had a crappy family experience. And so then you would say to them, what would it be like? You have this value around family, and it's not something that you actually have an actual memory of, but what would it be like for you if you did have it? And then that's kind of like a future pace where they could talk about it. I actually used to use that when I first started, when I did my training basically with the US, and I was doing heart lock-ins. I was struggling with the heart lock-ins to really kind of hang on to the feelings of care or appreciation or whatever. And my coach was saying to me, what do you think you could feel that for? And I said, well, I would like to be a dad, and I'm not a dad. My friends were. I came to father quite late. And so my coach said, well, what would it be like, do you think, to be a dad? And so I said, well, I'd like to imagine holding my child. And so I used to sit doing my heart lock-in, like holding my imaginary child. It was very powerful for me, very powerful. And, I'm blessed to have 2 children now. So, but it doesn't need to be something that you actually have a memory of. It can be something that you want, and it's an aspirational thing, So that's the process. Let me just dip back into the slide so I can just talk you through what it is we've just done. So we went through the the sorting out and the finding of the values, which is a self-awareness exercise. That's great. Then you got them. So I asked Daniel to score them from 1 to 10 in terms of fulfillment, which he did, and he did it very quickly. Then, reflection on, well, what does this tell you? Well, I was telling Daniel he's in a pretty good place, and there's a couple of things that maybe there's a little bit more work could be done, and there's some things that we need to protect as well. Actually, one thing I didn't do, Daniel, I'm not sure there is any, but is there any value conflict there? The classic that people have is family and achievement and stuff, work-life balance. But are there any in yours where you perceive that there could be a conflict between values? I can't hear you, Daniel. Are you on? Hang on, let me come back out.
Double mute again. Sorry.
Double muting.
The only ones for me that I thought would have like polarizing points is adventure and simplicity.
Okay,
but it depends how you define them and what they mean to you. But they certainly have aspects of themselves which would seem opposite.
Cool.
But I think that's the only one really.
That's cool. Okay, good. So is a question worth asking to some people, because they can have clear value conflicts, and then it's that issue around, okay, well, where do you place the balance? Where do you make the decision? Those types of things. If work and achievement are important to you, when do you stop the work? Where do you create the boundary so that you can spend time with the family? So that could just be a simple decision like, I'm going to close my laptop at 8 p.m. and that's it. And then I'm going to spend the evening with my kids or my partner or whatever it might be. So value conflicts is a useful one. And then, I asked Daniel to select a value and then to talk about a time when he'd experienced it, which he did, and he did brilliantly. So then your question to your coachee would be, what did you notice? I asked you collectively because I knew you would notice, and you did. But you would ask if it's a single coach, what did you notice? Reflect back if necessary, and then I would suggest you could do that with another value just to really kind of ram home the point that it's possible to shift our state by reflecting on things that are important to us. Oops. Okay. So that leads us nicely into a place where we can break for lunch. I'll take a couple of quick questions before we do that. We're not really prescriptive with the exact exercise or the language or anything like that. So we want you to have freedom to do this in your own way. In terms of the process that you've just been through and that you've experienced me do with Daniel, think you could do that yourself with someone else? Yeah, there's a lot of nodding going on. If there's anyone who's not or got any questions, shout them out. What might not be clear? Jacob, you got a...
Well, I don't know. I was maybe thinking out loud. What I read about this stuff, I mean, it's not about heart math, but is that like the way people make decisions is that they feel the decision and then they rationalize it in order to make the decision and justify how they feel.
Yeah.
And so I think, it feels a bit like this can be like, yeah, you're acknowledging the feelings and stuff, but then you're kind of having a rational discussion about why you're choosing what you're choosing. I mean, is it really about the feeling or the rationalization, or are they just connected? That's kind of...
Well, it's a really good point. And at this point in the coaching process, they're not practiced in coherence. So actually, really, the point of this right now is just to try and get some information about stuff that might be important to them.
Mm.
But it may well be that as a result of the journey that they're then going to go on, that you repeat this exercise at the end of the process, at the end of the coaching sessions of the journey, and it might be very, very different. I've certainly had that before. I've had people like high need for achievement types, and it's all like money, success, fame, all of that stuff's there. Yeah. And they've rationalized it exactly like you said. Go through the process, connect with the heart, do it again, and it's different.
Right. So it can be like a tool for transformation in how they understand their feelings.
Yeah. But it's not necessarily important that at this point we get this exactly right. And I mean, to be frank, who knows whether it's right or not? It depends on their level of self-awareness. And you as the coach don't know whether this is true or real or not. You might get some sense when you hear them talking. Like, we can be pretty confident that what Daniel was saying is important to him. Now, whether...
he felt that.
He felt it. Yeah. And so when you're coaching, one of the things that you'll be doing is you will pick up on whether you think this is just stuff that's coming from up here or whether it's real. And then you could challenge around it or ask some questions around it.
Right.
It's not important to solve that problem right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I've got a question, please. You made a point that I want to pick up on, which is when you did a hard lock-in on a future event, not a past event or memory, and that's quite important in my mind. That's called manifestation, and I've noticed that with my own personal growth that I can manifest things. Not that it's 100% accurate, but oftentimes if I feel and believe strongly enough in a series of actions beyond my control that will come into play. And it's something stupid. Just last week, my builder was tiling and there were a few ant nests, and I manifested for the ants to go away without killing them. And the next day was the great ant migration. I don't know if you read in the news, there was a
had one here.
That was just last week. Yeah. And my wife said, and I said to my wife, look, I'm gonna wish for the ants to go so I don't have to kill anything. And then boom, next day,
they all flew off.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Day after zero. So this manifestation ability, I think, or the question to you really is, does heart math teach or guide us to do what you did when you did your heart lock-in with the kid that you hadn't had yet?
Yeah, so that's not a technique that's present in this program, but there is a technique called we call it heart hologramming. and it's an intention manifestation thing. And the idea is that you identify what it is you want, okay, and you imagine like a kind of golden spiral coming out of your heart out into the everythingness, the isness, yeah. But there's a caveat to it, which is that I want this thing, but only if it's for the highest good.
Yes.
Okay. And that is our technique for manifestation. It doesn't work every time. My suggestion would be that if it doesn't work, it's because it's not, for some reason, not for the greatest good.
It has to be also within the realms of possibility. So,
well, of course,
you're asking for £5 billion and you're earning 10,000 a year. It's not going to happen. So,
and you have to believe it as well, don't you?
Oh, it's got to be
You
real.
know
It's
you
got to be
want,
authentic.
yeah.
It's got to be something you really want. Yeah. And actually, our perspective is that it has to be. It's not just a selfish thing.
Yeah, because I've done work around money. I've got loads of thingies around money, loads of limiting beliefs with it. So yeah, that's where I.
So look, well, I can send you the instructions for it. It doesn't form part of this program because this is supposed to be more kind of like practical and open. Well, or just like, you know, we don't want to scare people off. Like there's the bit of heart math that's just practical and most people are going to buy into. It's like, hey, yeah, it's breathing. I understand that's important and you've given me some science. That's cool. But then when I start talking about golden spirals coming out of my heart, I could scare some people off. We don't really want to do that.
It doesn't scare this crowd, Gavin.
It doesn't scare this crowd, I know, but we can. But in 5 minutes, I've got a leader or open the Zoom room for an online meditation I'm running. So I can take the question now, as long as I can answer it within 5 minutes. 4 minutes. Fire away, Glenn. Go on. Let's try it.
It wasn't really a question. It was just to Boone and everybody else there about this idea of impossibility. So many of us are here right now in this moment, living lives that at one stage in our lives, we probably, if asked, would have said it's impossible that I will be living this life.
True.
So I just wanted to chuck that out there.
That is true. Yeah. That is true. Yeah. Thank you. Cool. Right. Let's have lunch. I've got a dash to open up this online meditation. Can we come back at 1:50, please?
Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. Have a nice lunch. Have a bit of a break. Get away from computers, and I will see you in a bit.
Thanks, Glenn. That was brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers, Glenn. See you later.